Today, we'll attempt to answer the million-dollar question of, are your narcissistic parents mentally ill, or are they just pure evil? And for me to be able to do that, I'm going to have to answer three questions. One, were they mentally ill? Two, did they know what they were doing? And three, does understanding them change what happened to you? So let's start. First of all, let's address it. Were they mentally ill? Technically, narcissistic personality disorder, much like other personality disorders, are recognized mental health conditions. But not every one of your, what we call a narcissistic parent, has a diagnosable disorder. Many of them have a lot of traits of what is a narcissistic personality disorder, but are just very emotionally mature, they're very controlling, or just pure mean, or maybe a little bit crazy. But most of them, if we look closely enough, probably have one thing in common. And that's not that they were just abusive, but that they were abused themselves. And they most likely, most of them, have a narcissistic parent, which then had their own narcissistic parent, which then had their own narcissistic parent. And you get what I'm saying? If you take one of your narcissistic parents and you look at the line behind them, whoever was before them, you will find a long line of what you would be able to call a narcissistic, or at least very emotionally abusive and physically parent. So the narcissistic parent that you have today could be mentally ill and diagnosable as narcissistic, but could also be just a reflection and a byproduct of generational trauma having been enforced onto them by those before them through the way that we were raised. My thesis in narcissism being basically the expression of what we call now narcissistic parents is that it's just the expression of generational trauma being passed on through abuse. That was taken as love, right? We're loving and teaching and disciplining our children through abuse, and it ends up being a very narcissistic abuse based on how it is sort of formulated. Narcissistic abuse, no empathy, based on control. You have somebody who is always, is hierarchical, and it feels like a bit of a cult in the family system, right? Like you have the narcissistic parent who is the god that everybody has to follow. If you don't follow, there's punishment. It's a little microcosm that if you are to zoom out, then you see it in society. And if you zoom out, you see it in whatever god they're creating. This is the kind of like the expression of that. Even if you look at mythology, full of a narcissistic sort of archetypes of how it was to be a child in the hands of somebody who was stronger than you and was using that power against you, which is the core mindset of somebody who is narcissist, right? How can I extract more from you? I'm not interested in you. I just want to fulfill myself, and I will do that at any cost, right? So all of these parents, if we look back, have had a parent like that. Very few, I believe, were just born, and if you were to diagnose them narcissists when they were 3 years old. I believe a lot of what we see as narcissistic personalities and the traits that people hold, and this is up for debate, but you know what I mean? Like I strongly believe that it is all a byproduct of how we're raised and with how much emotional cruelty we were raised. Humiliation, extreme criticism, lack of empathy, a very, very emotionally hostile environment can really create it's the fertile ground for narcissistic abuse that then can create a narcissist out of whoever comes from that, should they enter then the same territory as now a parent who has the power and then unconsciously project on their child, that child that they were. Anyway, this is deeper than just something I can cover here, but this is my answer to the first question. Were they mentally ill? They definitely had a lot of traits of what we call a mental illness, that is the narcissistic personality disorder. But the origin of their behaviors was most likely the aftermath of their own childhood trauma, which is disordered and abusive. And it doesn't negate the fact that they were abusive, by the way. It's just to answer, were they mentally ill? Now, did they know what they were doing? Now, here's the difference, right? When we're like thinking about abuse, we usually say they did the best they could. Did they really know it was abuse? If they did it? And my answer to this is a question, really. Does it matter? If I harm you significantly, my intentions don't really matter. What matters is whether I've harmed you at the end of the day, right? But this question is really important for many of you, I understand, because you want to see where you stand in all of this. Because understanding that they probably didn't know what they were doing, they were just also hurt. That then means I can forgive them, and that then means that it wasn't personal, and that then means, so we want to try and create a different understanding of whatever happened here. And to this, I'm going to say something that may sound harsh, but the reason they treated you the way that they treated you and not your other siblings, or not the world outside of them, because a lot of them have shown skills to be very good in the external world. A lot of your parents are very admired by other people. A lot of your parents are very respected, very kind, right? And the reality is that the reason they treated you the way they treated you is because of you. And I don't mean it's because of something you did or you were to blame here, but it's because of who you were. Something about you created in them this unconscious, vicious vendetta against you, because you either reminded them of part of themselves that they hated, and so they just projected them onto you and started hating you because they hated those parts in themselves. This is how unaware of themselves they tend to be, these people who are emotionally mature and they don't reflect. They don't self-reflect. They don't see themselves. They constantly see projections of themselves onto others and continue to blame others for everything. Or they saw in you things that they've lost and resent you for it. A lot of you with narcissistic mothers will have experienced that. As you grow into a woman, you start looking beautiful and sexy, and you start getting attention, whatever, and you start having opportunities. She will resent you because you are showing her the youth, the sense of freedom and happiness that she does not think she has access to, and actually she blames you for not having. So, did they really know what they were doing? It's tricky. With emotionally mature parents, with emotionally mature people who have an inability to self-reflect, they don't really ever truly know what they're doing, right? Because they're projecting. At the same time, if they're put together out in the world and they're only horrible to you, it seems like this is not a matter of control, but something about you, they can see that they're doing this just to you, but they justify it and blame you for it. So they have no issue in blaming you for your own victimization. But here you are thinking whether you should forgive them or understand them more so that you can feel that this wasn't about you. I mean, in the grander scheme of things, it had nothing to do with you, but in actual reality, it happened to you. They did those things to you. You experienced those things. You were harmed. You were emotionally abused. You were treated with disrespect. You were betrayed by someone who was supposed to be a safe haven for you, right? They became your worst enemy. So, were these people genuinely evil or mentally ill? My general answer would be, does understanding that change what happened to you? Because whether they were mentally ill, traumatized, or emotionally immature, you were still abused. So I can't really tell you with certainty that your parent was a monster. And after doing this work myself all these years and seeing people, there comes a moment in our lives where if we process the anger enough, we reach a place where we can see them very clearly for who they were and for who they are now, because growing old humbles you. Some of them get worse as they age, but in reality, as we grow into ourselves and our self-worth and our own inner power, we start to see them as these old little people that were just, they messed up the opportunity to be a good parent to you. And they missed up on the opportunity to have a good relationship with their child. And they missed up with the opportunity to grow through their love for their children, but instead stay stuck in their ways or their mental illness or their inability to see you with kindness and empathy for who you were and to accept you for all of that. But more sadly is that they never managed to make peace with their own selves, because somebody who, had an emotional vendetta with their own child, I don't think they feel peaceful in their own mind. But either way, it doesn't matter, is basically what I want to say. Harm has been done. And what is important for you is to first be sure that you validate your experience with them rather than try to understand why they were the way that they were. So injecting sense of understanding and a point of view that isn't really, it doesn't correspond where you are in your journey. First, you have to really see what happened to you. So was your dignity respected? Did they exploit their power over you? Do they still refuse accountability? And do they continue to choose control over just human connection? Are they still playing the game? I'm your father, I'm your mother, you should do this, you should do that. And if they're still doing all of that, then it's really important for you to start seeing them for who they were, outside of putting them in boxes of diagnosis, but within the context of what they did to you. Because that's all that matters end of the day. And it really matters that you are able to validate your experience without the shadows of, but they were mentally ill, they were also traumatized, poor them, because that can come later and will come inevitably later, because it's just part of how we process things. Eventually, we get enough distance from everything that we can see it from a bigger point of view. But when you're trying to heal, you have to see it from your own inner point of view, and specifically from your own inner child's point of view, right? Because think of it this way: if you were to imagine now a scene of your past self, of your younger self, going through some type of thing with these parents, and you walk in as the adult and tell them, you know what? Your mommy was also traumatized. That's why she treated you so horribly today. Sure, that's valid. That's not what the child needs, right? So I would tell you that in the stage of your journey, especially the first important stage of your journey of recognizing that you need to do some work with yourself, you need to really validate what happened to you without all these things overshadowing your ability and your right to say, you know what, point the finger and say, it's them. That's what they did. This is the person that did this to me, right? Because it is important, because if not, you're going to keep blaming yourself. And I know a lot of people may think that I just love blaming parents for everything, which I really don't mind doing it. We've almost sanctified parents to the extent where we're like, we shouldn't judge parents. We should, like, as if they're God. Again, a microcosm of what is the family is what is expressed in societies. We can't really criticize people in authority, and we can't really criticize or have questions of why God does this or why God does that. Same. And I don't believe in that, because I don't believe in any of the other things that I just mentioned, which means that I am very comfortable blaming the parents. I don't think they are beyond and they're exempt from being blamed for the things that they did. And so if somebody's looking through their childhood and what they come up with is, whoa, my parents treated me this and this and this, did this things to me, and now as a result, not only did those things and that were horrible, and now as a result I struggle, that's what we need to do the work for. Where we have to draw a distinction is when we realize why we struggle based on those things. Then to heal those things, we have to take it and fix it and heal it ourselves, right? We can't just take it back to them and say, okay, now you broke this, so fix it, or eternally blame them for it if we're not propelling ourselves forward, right? But it is a necessary first step in our healing journey, which is why in the way that I teach things in my own sort of program of how to address childhood trauma is just a childhood audit of what happened to you, right? We go through all of the stops and we see what happened to you. And by doing all of that, we're just returning to our past like a compassionate witness to be able to say, oh, that's what they did. This is what they did to me. I thought it was my fault. Wow, they shouldn't have done that. I deserve better, blah, blah, blah. All of these things need to happen so that we can come back to a place where we're like, okay, let me just now recollect everything I learned. Now that I know, and I'm not responsible for my own victimization. I'm actually a worthy person. Let me just move on with my life, right? That's why Heal, my foundational healing program focuses on just that, because this is such an important a process for us to go through if we want to heal, without injecting ourselves all these moralities and these bigger and grander explanations that it was karmic and we were put into this universe to help our mommy set herself free for her own childhood trauma. Like, all these things are just no. So what I want you to do is not just blame the parents, but you have to see that a lot of these parents acted like ruthless monsters to you, to a child, and more specifically, to their own child. That a lot of them consciously chose to bring into this world. And that you, eventually, if you do this work, you will realize that you did deserve better. You deserve better. But you couldn't have known that when they were doing what they're doing to you, because all they were teaching you is that you're fundamentally flawed and unworthy. So as a result, now you're going around feeling very, very unworthy. And when you feel very unworthy, then all of the other things that you do make sense, because the building block of who you created yourself to be is a somebody unworthy based on what these people mirrored back to you. You see, that's their effect. That's why we have to really see their effect, and we have to heal and come back to our sense of worth. So, were they mentally ill? Were they just monsters? Doesn't matter. What matters is that you recognize what they did to you, how they treated you, and that you compassionately escort the younger you out of those moments by becoming the parent that you needed to the younger you, so that you can finally teach yourself what it would be like and what it is like to be treated with respect, kindness, to be protected, to be loved. And eventually, and this is coming from someone who went through it, it comes to a place where, even though there's always the recognition, yeah, that's what happened, that's what they did to me, it no longer hurts to that extent. Or at least maybe we just get better at carrying that pain of being treated in that way, of being failed so massively. But it doesn't matter. Were they mentally ill? Did they just hate you? Were they just crazy? Whatever it was, were they just monsters? Were they evil? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you know that you didn't deserve it, because now you know that you were worthy of better. And then coming with all of that comes the wisdom of really why it happened. Again, this is further down the line. Don't push yourself to go there. You will get there when it's time. If you ever want to get there, it's not a prerequisite. The most important thing for you to heal is to recover that one thing that being treated in this way, regardless of the why, has done to you, and that is to make you feel unworthy. So when you come back to your worth and you establish a different way of experiencing yourself and treating yourself, a kinder way, like you remove them from your inner system and you replace them with your own inner parent, then you have been able to reclaim and salvage some of what was lost, so that you can actually live the life that you deserve and not the life that abuse primed you for. So if you want a journey to walk you through all of the steps that I mentioned, if you want to go through the process of truly looking at your past with a clear eye and the point of view of the child that you were, plus the compassionate witness that you are, then my program Heal is going to be perfect for you. And at the end of it, you also get to meet me for a session. So if you want to have a look, I'm going to leave the links below, and I will see you soon.